आप लोग लाइमन से मिलते हैं ट्रेनर ट्राइब के सेशन के दौरान, या फिर मुझसे, आप में से बहुत सारे लोगों से मैं ऑलरेडी पहले मिल चुकी हूँ, या फिर जिन लोगों ने आज नया ज्वाइन किया है, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर ज्वाइनिंग इन. आई होप दिस सेशन विल बी यूजफुल फॉर यू इन सम अदर एस्पेक्ट. ये जो सेशन है वो किसी न किसी तरीके से आपके लिए यूजफुल होगा. कैन वी गो टू द नेक्स्ट स्लाइड? इससे पहले कि हम आज के सेशन के बारे में आपसे बातचीत करें, बिफोर वी टॉक अबाउट टुडेज सेशन टू यू, let me take you through the journey of what Quest Alliance is and is Trainer Tribe. तो सेशन शुरू करने से पहले मैं ट्रेनर ट्राइब और क्वेस्ट के बारे में थोड़ा सा आपसे बातचीत करना चाहूंगी. आप लोग सेशन के दौरान, आप में से बहुत सारे लोग ट्रेनर ट्राइब के पार्ट ऑलरेडी होंगे, और जिन लोगों ने नया ट्रेनर ट्राइब आज सेशन आज पहली बार ज्वाइन किया है, उनके लिए आई वुड रिक्वेस्ट माय टीम टू प्लीज पुट अप अ लिंक ओवर हियर. आप लोग ट्रेनर ट्राइब पेज, इस लिंक के ग्रुप जो है एजुकेटर्स का, इस लिंक के जरिए ज्वाइन कर सकते हैं. सो पीपल हु हैव जॉइन्ड द ट्रेनर ट्राइब टुडे for trainer tribe session for the first time, I would request my team to please put a link in the chat box, and you can join the trainer tribe group from this link. So trainer tribe is a educator community of Quest Alliance. We have now like, I'm feeling very proud to tell you that this community of yours have grown to 30 countries. Even pandemic can't stop it, so it's growing every day. Now we are in 30 country. So whatever you are curious about or whatever you want to put from the session, you can use hashtag trainer tribe and put it over the page or the group you are using in the Facebook. Can we go to the next slide? So during your entire masterclass today, I would request you to please mute yourself. Admin has already muted you, but in case through any like technical glitches or something, you are able to like, if that has not happened, or in between, if you see that you are not unmuted, so please mute yourself. And don't, like, if you are comfortable starting your video, showing your like seeing us, want to show your face, it's perfectly fine, you can do that. Otherwise, if you have a low bandwidth, you can even disable your video. आप लोग जिन हिंदी में भी दोबारा रिपीट करूंगी, पूरी मास्टर क्लास के दौरान आप लोग प्लीज अपने आप को म्यूट रखिएगा. ये बाकियों को बहुत अच्छे से हेल्प करता है, क्योंकि बहुत सारी वॉइसेस या नॉइस वगैरह नहीं हो पाता है, नहीं आती है इस वजह से. और अगर आपकी बैंडविड्थ, अगर आप कंफर्टेबल है, तो आप अपना चेहरा या फिर आप लोग अपनी वीडियो को ऑन कर सकते हैं, अदरवाइज आप वीडियो को डिसेबल कर लीजिएगा. कैन वी गो टू द नेक्स्ट स्लाइड? And if whatever questions you have, whatever comments you want to like, or whatever you want to say, you can use a chat box on the right side this way. You can just type your message over there. The whole team is here to see your messages, and during the entire course of this masterclass, our facilitators will be providing you the responses with your particular comments and questions. Thank you. Can we go to the next? So talking about Quest Alliance, we are a non-profit organization. We work for 21st century skills among young people by transforming learning ecosystem across school to work continuum. We work with schools, we work with colleges, we work with ITI and VTI till like work continuum. What Quest focuses is using like how building the capacity of young people so that they can foster so that they can foster 21st century skills, and the gap is bridged between work and the academia. And we work with middle school, secondary schools, also ITIs and VTIs, also with building the capacity of non-profit partners we are working with. Can we go to the next? Yeah, through our impact and partnerships, we have worked with government schools, we have worked with different ITIs and VTIs, we have worked with government DTs and other state governments. We would be like, I really want to thank all the funders with the support of whom we were able to reach out to such an impact and mass numbers, and this would have not been possible without the support of these partners. Thank you. So for today's masterclass, I would welcome Jasmine and Abha, who will be taking your session today. Abha, you can unmute yourself, and Jasmine, I think she'll be also able to unmute herself. So they are your facilitators for the day, and they'll be taking you through the course of another 1 hour. Thank you. और अगर आपको लैंग्वेज में कोई भी इश्यू होगा, इफ यू फेस एनी प्रॉब्लम इन लैंग्वेज, यू राइट इट इन अ चैट बॉक्स, वी विल बी हैप्पी टू ट्रांसलेट या फिर हिंदी में, इंग्लिश में. थैंक यू.
Thank you, Sanjana. Hi, everyone. Good evening to all of you. We've been told to speak in English primarily, because we have participants both from the north and south of India. I request anybody from the Quest Alliance team, if Hindi translation is required at any point, please assist that in the chat box if anybody wants it. So we will keep it largely in English. Thank you so much, first of all, for joining us here today. And we are really mindful of the fact that these are very difficult times. Everybody is going through personal or crisis overall. And so even within that, you have really come to join us, shows that you are committed to learning and committed to understanding what we are going to talk about today. And as you can see, that the topic of our discussion today is to understand the risks that are surrounding our children and the need for protection. And what we mean by these things, we will explore throughout the presentation. Before that, I have a request to all of you, okay? What you have to do is just look out for any 2 key learnings in the presentation today. So not more than 2, not less than 2, just listen to the entire presentation and see what are the 2 most important things that you are going to take away. What are the actionable items? Are you going to look up something? Is some insight that is really relevant to you? Are you going to reach out to somebody by email? Any 2 learnings, please keep in your mind so that you are able to focus on those 2 items. So moving forward, to understand what we mean by the terms risk, safety, and vulnerability. We are saying children are in great risk of certain abuses, violence, exploitation. And what are those risks? What do we mean by risks? We will explore in the session today. Before we say anything, I would like you to look at this picture and use your chat box and say, you can see the picture here and you can see 2 words, right? One is safety and one is vulnerability. I'm guessing that intuitively we all understand what is safety. I think I was muted by mistake. Yeah, so I'm guessing that we all understand what is safety, and vulnerability is a position of being exposed to certain dangers or risks, right? So does this picture speak to you? What do you think this is trying to signify? What do you think this picture represents to you in terms of safety and vulnerability? Can we have responses in the chat box? ये देखकर आपके दिमाग में कुछ आ रहा है? What do you think we are trying to say here? Anybody who has any ideas? Okay. Amey is saying that without the safety, eggs won't hatch. Great point. Okay. Anu is saying that the nest is a safe place. Okay, we will hold on to that. Is nest always a safe place? But yeah, that's an interpretation. What else do you think? What's the vulnerability here? Okay, Deepa is saying that it can be both. I'm guessing you mean the nest can be both safe and vulnerable at the same time. Okay. Nest is the safety and there is no greenery, which is the vulnerability. Great. The foliage kind of protects the birds. Yeah. Anu is also saying they're out in the open. They can be vulnerable, right? Any other point of views on what this picture signifies to you? Okay. Vulnerable to loss of life. This is very poignant right now. We are in these vulnerable times, all of us together. So eggs are vulnerable, Ratna is saying, to the outside environment. Very true. And let's keep these responses and keep the sense that we have of safety and vulnerability as we move ahead and try to understand what are some of the safety and vulnerability issues that we're talking about in case of children, right? I want you to think about this question. Have you asked this question to any children? Have you asked any child previously where that child feels safe? What makes them feel safe? Where that child is unsafe? What makes them feel unsafe? In your career as educators, or you may be working in technical institutions, schools, or NGOs, have you actually, or your own children, or children in your own families, have you asked this question to any child before? Right? I think it's an important question to go off of. During our trainings, when we do sessions with educators as well as young children, we always ask children this question in each of our trainings. And we say, okay, do you know where you feel safe? Can you tell us where you feel safe? Can you tell us where you feel unsafe? And you might be surprised. You may think that children as young as 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years old, who may not be able to express their feelings and thoughts very articulately, are always sure when they express to us where they feel safe and where they feel unsafe, right? So this is one of those things unequivocally children tell us, that they know that there are certain places and people who make them feel safe and unsafe. One of the myths about the nest that we were talking about earlier, that we tend to have, is that, okay, home is a safe place for a child. A home is a place where one feels comfortable. Home is a feeling, it's a warm and cozy place. Unfortunately, that's not to be the case, right? The data shows that at least 50% of the perpetrators of child abuse are known to the child, and child abuse can take place in familiar settings and familiar contexts, including that of a child's home. Data also shows us that children often come and tell us that we feel unsafe even in schools. Primarily, going to school or coming back to school is very hazardous for us. It's very unsafe. Some children would say that this particular uncle or relative, when they come to our house, I feel unsafe. Older boys in our neighborhood, or older girls, or older people in our neighborhood, they make me feel unsafe. Someone takes my photos in a wrong place, that makes me feel unsafe. Some uncle, elder brother, relatives who we don't know, when we are at home alone, we feel unsafe. So it's very important to base our discussion on what children are very clearly able to articulate to us about their ideas of safety and their realities of safety and where they feel unsafe, right? Including places that are usually supposed to be safe, like home and school, but unfortunately, they're not the case for many children who get abused and violated and exploited. When we are talking about abuse, I want us all to remember that we are talking about 4 different kinds of abuse. We are not talking about sexual abuse alone, but we're also talking about physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect. Many times, abuse is also multidimensional. If some abuse or violence happens to a child, many times all 4 of them, or 3 of them, or 4 of them are involved, right? For example, if a child is unfortunately going through sexual abuse, it leaves a great deal of emotional trauma in the mind of the child, right? So emotional abuse is almost always present in its very highest severity. Neglect, unfortunately, we are seeing that in the current health crisis, fundamental needs of a child to survive, to develop, to have a protected environment are not being provided to the children for various reasons. And that could be a form of neglect on behalf of the state, on behalf of all the duty bearers whose responsibility it is to provide children what they need to survive, right? So when we're talking about abuse, we're talking about physical, emotional, sexual abuse, as well as neglect. There are certain abuses or certain cultural practices that are abusive that we have seen all around us. Those practices can be child labor, child marriage. It could be discrimination and exclusion based on someone's religion. If a child is saying to a neighbor in the class, you can't come and sit with us because you belong to a particular religion, that's discrimination, that's exclusion, that's an example of child abuse. If a child is getting trafficked from vulnerable areas in the hills, um, that's a case of abuse. If a child is pushed into labor, if a child and the family of the child is pushed into bonded labor, that's a form of abuse. If a child is getting married before the age of 18, before they're physically and emotionally mature, that's a form of abuse. And we see that these forms of abuse occur all around us. And please do write in the chat box, in your area of work, have you come across these cases? Have you come across cases of trafficking? Have you come across cases of sexual abuse? Have you come across cases of child labor or bonded labor that you have come across, but you may or may not be sure of how to deal with it, right? So I'm very curious to read what your realities are where you work. We can see that even though all children are vulnerable to abuse, there are certain factors that increase the vulnerability to abuse even further. As you can read the list on the slide, a key factor could also be that gets very rarely talked about is mental and or intellectual and physical disability. Studies have shown that children with disabilities are 4 to 5 times higher, they have higher risk of abuse, right? So what are we doing about children who we know in our communities, in our neighborhoods, in our schools, who have intellectual or physical disability? Are we aware of the fact that they are at, therefore, higher risk of abuse, violence, and exploitation? One of the case, and how does it reflect in the laws that we have? For example, for the protection of children. An example of a law could be, you may or may not be familiar with this law, it's called POCSO, it's Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act. It's a POCSO actually, fortunately, has a special provision for children with disability. For example, if a child has an intellectual disability and they have to go to court, the law states that it's mandated that special educators who are teachers of the child in school or in other learning places, they need to act as mediators between the child and the court, right? So it's important for us to recognize these added risks and vulnerabilities so that we can take care of them in the systems and in the institutions that we have set up to protect the children. Another example of increase in vulnerability is natural calamities and crisis and riots and wars. Unfortunately, last couple of years, we have seen in India all three of these. We have seen floods happening in various states. We have seen riots being instigated in the capital of the city. We have also seen, unfortunately, global pandemics. We speak about wars very commonly as if it's a pride to us. However, in these situations of riots and wars and conflicts of any kind, children are one of the most vulnerable beings in terms of being abused and violated. You would have also heard that Childline, which is an organization set up by the government of India, had increased number of calls, disproportionately higher number of calls that they received during the pandemic that were about the child abuse cases. So this is a very serious situation, and we need to really understand that children and their safety and their protection is paramount to us, and all children are vulnerable to abuse. You may think that children who are in more privileged homes escape this abuse and violence, and that's unfortunately also not the case. Children in all kinds of homes are vulnerable to sexual abuse. Children who have access to digital devices, they are also vulnerable to online abuse, online bullying, or even sexual abuse online. So this is an important matter for us to remember. As we move on, we would share with you as Mudita Foundation some of the case stories of related to child safety and protection that we have encountered. You can see a data point on the slide. It says that Ministry of Women and Child Development had conducted a study. And this was an anonymous study with a few thousand children. And they asked in various questionnaires and surveys about child abuse. And over 53% of the children who had taken the survey said that they were sexually abused in one way or another, right? So more than half of the children who took the survey said they were sexually abused. And this is a staggeringly high number. Amongst those people who said that they were abused, 57% of them were boys. I hope this also breaks another myth for you that child sexual abuse only happens to girls or only largely happens to girls. It's not true, unfortunately. It also happens with boys, albeit the cases reported maybe less than cases reported for girls. What this means to us, amongst us, we're all educators. We may be working in secondary schools. We may be working in ITIs, where young people and young adults come to us. what does it mean for us as responsible adults, responsible citizens, to share a case story? When we were doing trainings with an educational organization, a school in Delhi, they shared a story with us after our training sessions that they are noticing a girl who is who is enrolled in their school. She has not been coming to school for months together. She comes on and off, on and off, and whenever she does come to school, she repeatedly asks to be taken to the doctor, and she wants to take rest in the medical room in the school. And since in the trainings with Mudita Foundation, they had sort of spoken about what are the possible indicators that should raise a red flag for you and say, okay, this might be a case of abuse. We had said that repeated absence from school could could be an alarming sign and something that needs to be investigated further. Upon having several conversations with this girl after she was found to be absent from school, the school teacher, a class teacher, realized that the girl was getting abused by a friend of her own brother in her own house and sexually abused. And because we have had several conversations with the organization on how to respond to abuse, some action was taken moving forward. But this, in your own schools, in your own classrooms, this also might be a reality. Another case, another practice of child abuse is child labor and child marriages. India is one of the highest when it comes to numbers of child labor. 27% of girls, UNICEF data says, are married before the age of 18. So again, what it means in our day-to-day functioning as an educator, as an organization who's working, for example, on skilling, what it means for us to look out for these things, right? And you've also seen that the pandemic may worsen the situation of child labor and child marriage, and has already worsened the situation from all the data and reports that we are getting so far. Another case that an anti-human trafficking organization in our network had to deal with. This is a very poignant story because in this case, it was found during a rescue operation that young boys between 11 and 15 years old in Bangalore, they were rescued from a small factory unit. And these boys had originally been trafficked for labor from Bihar. When people tried to understand what work these children were doing, you won't believe that these children were actually stitching school bags. And these school bags were eventually going to be used in a government run program in another state. Right? So this is the reality that we're dealing with. The children are also being used to stitch footballs, stitch school bags for other children, for their right to education to remain intact. Another grave violation of safety and protection for children comes in the form of trafficking. I mentioned about a trafficking case earlier as well. Trafficking, if you're not aware, is a phenomenon. It's a complex phenomenon where a person is forcefully taken or deceitfully taken and transported from one place to another. It could involve false promises of job, false promises of love or marriage, and or it could involve abduction. It could involve kidnapping, and children and other adults, women, are forcefully taken to do certain jobs. Those jobs could be commercial sexual exploitation. These jobs could be bonded labor, child labor. A lot of the child labor experts say is also trafficked from various cities and villages of India. These children could also be used for begging, for organ transplant, and all kinds of nefarious activities. It says that the data shows, the NCRB data, National Crime Records Bureau data shows that 3 out of 5 people who are trafficked in India are children. They are under the ages of 18 years old. If you look at brothels and places where sex work occurs, people have estimated that maybe 60% of those are likely to be children. The data varies, but the numbers are alarming. Another case of trafficking that, as Mudita Foundation, we engaged with in the recent past is trafficking for domestic servitude. So we saw that in Delhi, we got a tip from someone to say that, okay, we are finding out that there are 6 to 7 boys who want to go back to their home in Jharkhand. And they were actually forcefully kept in upper middle class homes as domestic servants in Delhi. And they were taken from Jharkhand, abducted from Jharkhand by deceitful activities through an agent. And unfortunately, only one of those boys could be rescued. But this is an activity that happens rampantly in major metropolitan cities, smaller cities. It's not something that only occurs in remote areas, not within our watch. Another kind of abuse that we would like to talk about is abuse that happens in online spaces. And one key aspect of that I would like all of you to pay attention to is grooming. And grooming is basically an activity where a perpetrator or somebody who is about to commit abuse or who has an intention of committing abuse on somebody, he or she prepares the child to trust them, to lay their faith in them, to let their guards down. Grooming can happen in online spaces as well as offline spaces. For example, in online spaces, it could start by just randomly chatting or just like showing a thumbs up or a love sign on somebody's photo. And the conversation starts from there, it builds on, you start eventually speaking about more personal things, and you build a rapport, you build a trust. Eventually, you start to isolate this person from other support systems and members of the family, perhaps, who they may be close to earlier, so that there is unwavering trust and faith in this one person who eventually becomes an agent for abuse and exploitation later. One of the cases that another anti-human trafficking organization in our network has shared with us is that a girl was trafficked by her boyfriend, saying that let's elope and get married. However, when they eloped and sat in the train, the boyfriend of the girl left the train and he left the girl with 4 or 5 of his friends. And these friends eventually committed grave acts of sexual abuse on the girl. What happened was, however, that the grooming was so strong that even after this girl was rescued, she still had faith that this is not her boyfriend's fault. This is maybe somebody else's fault. And she laid her trust again in the boyfriend and got re-trafficked for the second time, thinking maybe this time he would save me or protect me. So this is the extent of trust that grooming can develop. So if you see, some organizations have shared that girls, you start getting gifts. We have seen that some of the girls who come to our learning center are getting new watches, new dresses, new phones. We don't know where it's coming from. Who are these people? Why are they doing all these things? So these are some of the stories. If you are a skilling organization, if you're an ITI, it's really important for us to see, are the young people who are going off to distant places in search of jobs, are they falling trap of trafficking networks? Are they falling in the hands of the criminal network? And are we preparing our young people, our children, to keep themselves protected from these kinds of abuse and exploitation? I am hoping that now we have built some idea on what these issues mean to us. This is an introductory PPT, so we hope that you write your comments and questions in the chat box. If you have any other questions, if you want a more detailed understanding of these issues, that you would get back to us on these things. The second most important question is, why should child safety and protection be a critical issue or critical mandate for all of us? For example, I may say, no, but I just like run a sports program for children in my community, or I do STEM for Girls program. Where is the issue of trafficking there? Or you may say that I work in an ITI. What about trafficking there? I don't understand. Or what kind of abuse should I be looking out for? And why is it my responsibility at all? So this may be a question that you may be faced with. One of the strongest responses to that would be that it's the right of a child, right? It's not something that you and I are saying. It's not just a nice thing to do. It's a fundamental right that all of us need to start asking for. And I'm hoping that the pandemic situation has kind of woken us up to the realization that unless we ask for our fundamental rights to be met, for example, right to good health and right to survival, nobody is going to give it to us, right? So it's our responsibility to hold the duty bearers responsible. Otherwise, we may do all kinds of things, but not remember that fundamentally, for all of us, these are our rights, right? And they need to be met in all conditions. There are no caveats, no exceptions. Right? Just as all human beings have rights, the Constitution of India gives us fundamental rights. in 1989, children's rights were separately acknowledged in one of the most famous treaties and conventions called the United Nations Conventions on the Right of the Child, UNCRC, as it is known. It recognizes 4 categories of rights: right to survival, right to live, right to stay alive, right to protection. If you stay alive, but you should be protected from harm. So that's the right to safety and protection. Right to development. Right? It's not just enough merely to be alive. You should be able to thrive. You should be able to develop your own potential and uh, live up to your highest potential. Right? So right to development can have right to education, right to play, right to participation. If I am a human being, I may be a child or I may be an adult, I have the right to participate in the decisions that are being made about my own life. Somebody else cannot be making decisions about when I should be getting married, when I should be, where I should go to work, how I should live, how much I should eat. In an age appropriate manner, children should be involved in all the conversations that we're having about participation. So one of the answers as to why should I care about safety and protection is because it's the right of every single child. It's the right of a child who's living on the street. It's also the right of a child who's living in your own homes, right? And it's all our adults' responsibility to fulfill that right. Today, however, we are largely going to focus on the right to safety and protection. Um, if you look at the Indian legislature, you can see that the UN, after the UNCRC was ratified by India, we also passed several laws to take care of rights of children. One of those laws is Juvenile Justice Act. Juvenile Justice Act basically talks about children who are in need of care and protection, as well as children who are who may be in conflict with the law. There's another act, POCSO, which is the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act, which recognizes all kinds of sexual abuses. It could be contact abuse where physical touch is involved, or non-contact abuse. Also, this POCSO Act is applicable for both boys and girls under 18 years of age. IT Act, Information Technology Act 2000. Some sections of the IT Act also talk about abuse that happens in cyberspaces, in online spaces. Immoral Trafficking Prevention Act is the act that we have in place right now that takes care of trafficking cases. However, it only deals with sex trafficking cases so far. So these are some of the acts that we have in our legislature. Another very, very pertinent reason for taking child abuse, violence, and safety issues seriously is the fact that effect of abuse on a life of a child is really deep. It's really deep and it's severe. It can have short-term effects as well as very, very long-term effects, sometimes effects that accompany you throughout life. As you can see, it can cause physical injuries. There are cases of disability because of abuse, even death. If you, for example, if you're running a program of, maybe it's a play school, or if you're running a program that teaches children mathematics or science, right? You're running a program that teaches young girls to come together and play football, for example. The objective of your program would not be met at all if a child who is currently undergoing abuse, violence, or exploitation, and that issue is left unaddressed. The effect of playing football or effect of activities related to education won't matter at all, because the effect of violence and abuse would be so severe, and the child mostly would be grappling with those, right? So even if your focus area may not be child safety and protection, we cannot leave these issues unaddressed. One of the important issues from a mental health standpoint, and mental health is becoming a really important conversation through the pandemic, and it will hopefully remain so after the pandemic, is the effect of trauma. And trauma is a sustained deep impact or a deep crack that goes through one's life. It could have severe effects like anxiety, depression, suicidal tendencies, social anxiety, and that can prevent a child from living their life to full potential, even up in their adulthood. So hopefully, so far we have made a case with you that all of us who are right now here engaging with children or young people in any manner need to take these issues of child safety and protection seriously. At this point, we will move on to the next section of the PPT, and I ask Jasmine to take it forward from here.
Abha, we have few questions in the chat box. So,
Okay, I'll keep a track of the chat box, and maybe we can take some of these questions towards the end of the PPT.
sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abha. So I would like to start from where Abha actually left, that it is our responsibility to keep children safe. I would like to share one example by about us having a conversation with some children from one of the NGOs in Delhi. And when we asked them that what is your expectation actually from adults? What do you think they can do to keep you safe? So the answer was that we expect them to keep us safe completely. As adults, it is their responsibility, it is their duty to provide us with a space where we feel safe, where we can express freely, and where we can be whatever we want to be and live with freedom. So each one of us, especially as educators, as caregivers, people with whom children spend so much time of the day, we have to take the onus of creating a safe space for children and protecting them and safeguarding them. We understand that we all have different roles and responsibilities. We are in different setups at all points of time, but at every level, we can do something to protect our children. At an organizational level, we must have awareness and training programs like the one we are having today. These are very, very essential to start a conversation, to initiate conversations about issues like this, and also trigger questions. Just to begin questioning that, oh, something like this exists. What more can I do about it? It is highly recommended for any organization, any institution that is working with children and youth, that they should have protection policy. It is recommended because child protection policy is actually a document which lays out all the guidelines, protocols, norms, and processes of preventing and responding to abuse. So if at any point of is a disclosure by any child, or in any case, any severe case of abuse has happened, how do you respond to it? And also ensuring how we can prevent such incidents. As an organization, we should also try and develop a network of organizations, a network in which we have contacts whom we can reach out to as and when an issue occurs. So if there is a severe case, there are so many organizations, and sometimes schools also, they do not with the case end to end. They do not know the protocol completely. In that case, it is always best to reach out to an organization which is an expert who knows what has to be done at what level and what are the steps that have to be taken. So as Abha, when she was talking about some of the case studies, this is how some of the NGOs had reached out to us when they felt that a child has been abused and there was a case of disclosure. At classroom level, all of you are educators, most of you are educators, as we were told. It is very important that we create an environment which is trustworthy for children, which is safe and which is completely open to expression, an environment which facilitates expression. To do that, it cannot be done in one day. It has to be a continuous process, and there are several tools that can be used. I'm sure many of you might even know these tools. So there can be classroom contracts or safety contracts, where the learning group and the educator, they both decide what will make the entire interaction a safe activity, what would they appreciate, what they would not appreciate. talking about emotional awareness activity, facilitating vocabulary through which children can express themselves better, so that they can tell them what they are feeling, what are the uncomfortable feelings that they are having. We must talk about safe and unsafe touch from a very early age. Pies chart, it's a chart where we talk about, where we give an opportunity to students to come and share which aspect of their life are they feeling safe or unsafe. Is it physical? Is it emotional? Is it social? How are they feeling that day? So, activities like these can create a space for expression. At an individual level, educate yourself. All of you are doing that, I'm sure, and especially as a part of Trainer Tribe, you are attending this session. So this is the beginning. Educate yourself about this issue. Look out for indicators of abuse. There are several signs that indicate, that tell you that okay, something is wrong with the child. We will delve a little more into this in the next slide. Take responsibility. I understand that a lot of times we might be in the position where we are not directly related to the child, or we do not find ourselves in a position where we can take action right away. But please do not ignore the case. Please do not ignore that the child is going through something. Instead, take responsibility and go for the action which is the best suited in that process. Do respond to disclosures, and there is a way how we respond to disclosures, that too we will delve into in the coming slides. Be a role model for safety. Choose your words very very safely, very wisely. Choose your actions very wisely, because children are the best imitators. They are always noticing what their educators and what their caregivers are doing. When we were talking about educate yourself and spread awareness, the first and foremost thing is we need to accept this.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Hanji. The first and foremost thing we need to do is we need to accept child abuse as a very very serious issue. It is prevalent in all settings, in different settings, and it's very near to us. I understand that there's a culture of silence around this issue. There are a lot of stigmas also. There are also a lot of myths around it. We feel that ये तो शायद सिर्फ मूवी में ही होता है, शायद ये सिर्फ रूरल एरियाज में होता है, it is only happening in slums or in villages, but that's not true. And as Abha mentioned previously, in today's time, online space is also extremely unsafe, and almost every child has access to the internet today. So every child is vulnerable, and abuse is highly prevalent. Organize capacity building programs for your organizational staff. Not only organizational staff, you can talk about this issue with your peers, with your friends, with your colleagues, neighborhood, in your RWA, with children around, so that a conversation is initiated. People get to know that something like this is happening. You must familiarize yourself with resources as well. Internet is full of resources, tools that can help you prevent abuse. We too will be sharing certain tools with Quest Alliance, and they will be mailing it to you. We are talking about recognizing indicators of abuse. As educators, we are spending a great deal of time with children. They are around us for a lot of time, especially before the pandemic. That is how it was being done. And even now, through online classes, you can see if there is a certain change in behavior of a child. While abuse is a very, very complex issue, and there are layers to it, but certain signs you can always watch out for, which will remind you, or which are an indicator that you must initiate a conversation with the child, that something might be wrong. I must reach out and help. So first is physical injuries, especially physical injuries which are unjustifiable. You see that the child is not walking properly. There are injuries in his or her private parts, the soft parts of cheeks. Injuries that may not have been caused due to just falling down or a small friendly tip. So you must ask, did you get hurt? What caused these injuries? Higher anxiety, you see the child is extremely restless. The child is perpetually anxious, is unable to pay attention. That too is a sign of abuse. Neglect and hygiene. You see the child earlier would be very well kept, would come very neat and clean, but suddenly does not take care of his or her hair, his uniform, does not pay much attention to how he's appearing. That too is a sign of abuse. Self abusive behavior, which is very, very common among teenagers, because when abuse, teenagers and children, they tend to feel that it is all of their fault. You would have seen that, children tend to use compass and blades on their bodies. And such abusive behavior, it might start from in small capacity, but it can have very, very negative, long lasting effects. Withdrawn from surroundings, you see sudden change in behavior of a child. The child is not willing to interact with groups, is not willing to play with other children, or for that matter, even answer in class. That too is a big sign of abuse. Fear of going home is a big sign that perhaps child is facing abuse within the home setting, and perhaps somebody the child is not able to tell you as well with a lot of trust, tries to hide things. You are asking the child, but the child is not very comfortable. That too is a sign, because the child feels that nobody will actually believe him or her that something like this has happened. So these are some signs that you can definitely watch out for. And as Abha mentioned in one of the slides before, that regular absenteeism, a child's repetitive behavior which is not very justifiable, those are also signs of abuse. Once you have identified the signs and you have started speaking to a child, and if you have created an environment where the child feels trusted, if a child comes and shares a case of disclosure, a case of abuse, or discloses an experience of abuse, I understand that hearing something like this from a child, how much ever prepared you are, can leave you with a lot of shock, grief. It can upset you. But at that point of time, when the child comes to you, don't show surprise or extreme reaction. Be very, very calm and just listen to the child attentively. Be patient, because the child needs some time to open up. Do not ask them or interrogate them continuously what happened, where it happened, क्या हुआ था, क्यों नहीं बताया, तुमने ऐसा क्यों नहीं किया, because that may discomfort the child a little. Instead, empathize. Do not judge them or blame them, and give them a sense of control and assure them that you are there with them to help. At the same time, please do not make false promises to children, that whatever you're saying will remain between you and me, we won't take it out, don't worry, everything will be fine. When abuse happens, it has to be an action has to be taken. So please inform the child about what are the next steps that you will be taking. Whether the parents have to be informed, parents have to be informed if they are not involved in the abuse. If one of the parent is involved in the abuse, in that case other action has to be taken. You have to follow up with the higher authorities of the organization. If there's a complaints committee, it has to be taken to that as per the child protection policy of the organization. And collectively, then it is decided what course of action should be taken. It should be reported, an FIR should be filed, there should be regular counseling. And if the case is too complex and the organization does not feel equipped enough to deal with it, then an expert organization must be reached out to. We also understand that as educators, a lot of time you are bystanders. You are third person who are observing that something wrong has happened with the child. At the same time, children might even trust you a lot as their educators, and might come and help you. So at any point of time, there are certain contacts, there are certain local resources that you can reach out to, and you must be aware of whom you can reach out to for help if there is a case of disclosure, and if you want to help a child. There's child helpline, police helpline, the police stations in the area, anti-human trafficking units, cyber cells, local child welfare committee, which is a very, very strong body, local juvenile justice board members, district child protection units, national and state commission for protection of child rights. So these days you must be seeing that NCPCR and DCPCR are posting a lot about how they can help children if we find any child in distress, left alone, or not getting what they must have, you know. NGOs also, just like Mudita Foundation, there are several other NGOs. You can reach out to us as well, as in when you feel that you need to help out a child. Coming to the end of the presentation, I would like to share what Mudita Foundation actually does. We definitely shared that we are committed towards creating a safe space for children, for women, and we hope that every individual is able to live freely and achieve his or her full potential. The three key issues that we are working towards tackling human trafficking, child sexual abuse, and online abuse. We observed that these three issues involve violence, exploitation, and abuse at a very, very large scale. And all these three issues have a culture of silence attached to it. There are several stigmas, and people believe that these things are not happening around us. But the reality is that it is happening at a very, very large scale. At the same time, all these three issues are interlinked at some level. Children and women are being trafficked for sexual abuse. Human trafficking and sexual abuse is happening through online means as well. So all of these overlap. What we do to tackle these issues is we conduct awareness and capacity building sessions, just like how we are doing one session for you all today. We also do in-depth capacity building trainings where we work with community-based, train them in the course of 7 to 8 sessions. We are also supporting organizations in developing and executing organizational policies. Through few of our endeavors and through few of our programs, we are trying to build an organizational network as well, which can work collectively for larger impact. And at the same time, we are also working on certain evidence-based researches. You can reach out to us anytime you feel, and if you think that you want to conduct more sessions for your peer groups, your network, please do reach out to us. If you think there's any case that we can help you with, do reach out to us for that as well. One thing I wanted to talk about, and I skipped in the previous slide, is that when we talk about organizational child protection policy, it is also very important that all the members of the organization are taken through that child protection policy very in the beginning, especially at the orientation, and time and again that organizational child protection policy should be referred to so that everybody is aware how they can prevent abuse and how the cases can be handled if any disclosure happens. So with the hope that every child is safe, we come to an end, and we will continue to work and ensure that every child is protected. Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, Jasmine. One question just is coming to mind, and you were talking about this trafficking and all the violence and all that, and that Mudat is just dealing with this kind of activity to stop all those things. And the online abuse is now the concern for each and every organization, also very much concerns about this, and those who are just developing the child, and those who are concerned for the children's development, all are now, it is they are thinking about this. Online is now very, very important for children. And every child is very much they are very much connected with this online session class and all that, and there is more a possibility that they can be abused in anyhow. And my point is, what kind of a strategy, what kind of that prevention component you have created, or the whatever you, as per your, could you please just suggest so that it would be good for us to take further action, just we can also control. Because it is online. Without online, there is no any possibility, because this pandemic, because of this pandemic, all children are online. It is very, very possibility that they can be abused. So in that case, what kind of strategy we can follow to just address this issue?
Thank you, Aaron. And I think you have pointed a very, very significant issue, because online abuse is on the rise. And especially now when everything is online and the new normal is all about internet and screen. Now is the time that children must be told every now and then that what are the risks. So very often we talk to our children about the benefits, and how it's a boon that internet is there, we can find everything. But at the same time, it is important that children at all ages are told about the risks that internet comes with. We as an organization conduct cyber safety sessions as well. We also do cyber safety training for coordinators, if they want to know how they can teach children about the risks of internet. And if you also would want to do that, we can really help you. If you want some resources on how you can talk to children about internet safety, that too we can help you with.
There is another question in the chat box. I think Akanksha was asking about what is a pies chart. I can just take that question. It's a if you have seen, it's basically a chart that some of you may be familiar with. PIES basically stands for physical, intellectual, emotional, and social safety. Let me give you an example. So in one of my classrooms when I used to teach, we used to just put up a chart with physical, intellectual, emotional, and social safety written in 4 different columns. And children were told about what this means, what are some of the examples of being physically unsafe, if somebody beats you up, if somebody pushes you in the corridor, so on and so forth. What do you mean by intellectual safety? If you would want to feel that you are learning well, you don't want to be made fun of if you don't understand something, you want to basically feel like you're a intellectually capable person, right? If that seems to be a danger, that's an intellectually unsafe situation. And that's unsafe situation sometimes a teacher may cause. If a teacher says, ye kya buddhu hai, ye gadha hai, that puts a child at great intellectual unsafe situation. Emotional safety is when your emotions are hampered. Social safety is when you cannot function in an inclusive social environment. So we had explained this to them, and every child in the classroom was told that if during the week, if you feel unsafe in any of these 4 kinds of ways, just go and put a mark or write your name in that column. And we used to have a regular safety meet, and we used to say, okay, like in the physical safety, we have 3 complaints. People would either write the complaint, people would write their name, or it could be an anonymous tick mark. It was up to people, right? So when we say, okay, we have been having a lot of complaints about, for example, children locking the door of the bathrooms from outside, or we've been having a lot of complaints about use of abusive words. And so then we would discuss based on what the complaints that children were bringing. So it's just a participatory tool where children can put the nature of their complaints, especially related to safety issues in the classroom. So if anybody works in a classroom, it's a great tool to have. One important thing it does is also builds a vocabulary. If you have 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th graders in the class, you would see that after a few months, they would start and say, teacher, I feel emotionally unsafe. And sometimes they would use it as a fun thing also, but then you know that the children are empowered to talk about violations of their rights, talk about violations of their safety. And it's one of the great skills where a child can say no, a child can say, this is my right to feel safe, it's been violated. So it's a great tool that we have seen work in classrooms. We have another question from Revanna, who's saying, is there any other law on Online safety, yes. There are some provisions in the IT Act, Information Technology Act 2000, and that talks about a lot of things, but some sections of the IT Act do talk about online safety, online bullying, and all other kinds of cyber crimes. If anybody has any other questions or comments, you can unmute yourselves as well.
मैम मैं एक क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहती हूँ. ओके, कभी कभी ऐसा होता है कि कम्युनिटी में हम लोग जब वो बच्चे 3-4 इयर्स के होते हैं तो हम उन्हें अब्यूजमेंट क्या है वो नहीं समझा सकते. मतलब उनका माइंड उतना सेटअप नहीं होता है कि वो अब्यूजमेंट को समझे, बैड टच गुड टच को समझे, लेकिन उनके साथ ऐसा कुछ हो रहा होता है और वो अप्लाई करते हैं. मतलब वो खुद वो ऐसी चीजें करने का ट्राई करते हैं. तो ऐसे टाइम पे हम पेरेंट्स से बात नहीं कर सकते, क्योंकि हम जब कम्युनिटी के बारे में बात करते हैं तो हमें एक बात हमेशा ध्यान में रखनी होती है कि पेरेंट्स उसको पॉजिटिवली नहीं लेंगे, वो हमेशा नेगेटिवली ही लेंगे. और जब वो किसी ऐसे मतलब बच्चे के साथ में हो रहा है तो वो डेफिनेटली इशू बहुत बड़ा बन जाता है और हमें उसको बढ़ाना नहीं है. लेकिन एज अ टीचर हमें उन बच्चों को ट्रीट भी करना है, हमें उनको उस चीज से बाहर भी निकलना है. तो ऐसे टाइम पे हमें क्या करना चाहिए कि वो बच्चे को हार्म भी नहीं होना चाहिए, उसके माइंड से वो चीजें हमें निकालनी भी है, साथ ही साथ हमें उनको सेफ भी रखना है. तो ऐसे टाइम पे हमें क्या करना चाहिए?
Jasmine?
Yeah, I'll answer that. नयना, राइट? नयना, आपने बहुत रियलिस्टिक क्वेश्चन पूछा है और आपने इस बात को दोबारा से सामने लाए हैं कि ये जो इशू होते हैं बहुत कॉम्प्लेक्स होते हैं. बहुत जगह ये सारी जानकारी नहीं होती है कि एक्चुअली गुड टच बैड टच क्या है, और बच्चे कभी कभार बहुत छोटी उम्र के साथ ऐसा होने लग जाता है. तो सबसे पहले तो जरूरी है कि एक तो पहली बात ये है कि हमें इस चीज को इग्नोर नहीं करना है. हमें ये चीज समझनी है. हमें पता है कि अभी भी हमारे देश के बहुत हिस्से ऐसे हैं जहां पर इस मुद्दे के ऊपर जागरूकता नहीं है, पर उस सच्चाई को समझते हुए हम इस मुद्दे को इग्नोर नहीं कर सकते हैं. हमें लंबी लड़ाई का फासला तय करना पड़ेगा, बिकॉज ये जो चीजें हैं इनको टाइम लगता है. इसके लिए लॉज भी हैं, इसके लिए सिस्टम्स भी हैं, लेकिन अवेयरनेस जो है आपको पेरेंट्स से भी स्टार्ट करनी पड़ेगी. तो एज यू सेड यू आर वर्किंग इन कम्युनिटी, तो कम्युनिटी लेवल पे आपको सिर्फ बच्चों के साथ नहीं पेरेंट्स के साथ भी काम करना है, ताकि जब ऐसा कोई मुद्दा निकल के आए सामने तो पेरेंट से आप फर्स्ट कॉन्वर्सेशन नहीं कर रहे हैं. पेरेंट को ऐसे मुद्दों के बारे में ऑलरेडी पता है, और आज नहीं तो कल आप शुरू कर सकते हैं इस बारे में बातचीत. बहुत सारी एक्टिविटीज होती हैं जिससे आप पेरेंट्स के साथ ही इन मुद्दों पर बात करना शुरू कर सकते हैं. जरूरी नहीं कि हम सीधा सेक्सुअल अब्यूज से बात करें. हम बच्चे की सुरक्षा के बारे में, हेल्थ के बारे में बात कर सकते हैं. उन्हें बता सकते हैं कि बच्चे के लिए क्या सही है क्या गलत है, कि बच्चे अब बड़े हो रहे हैं, उनको एजुकेशन मिलना होता है. और ऐसे ही मुद्दों पर बात करते करते आप इन मुद्दों पर भी बात करना शुरू कर सकते हैं. चाइल्ड सेक्सुअल अब्यूज के बारे में गुड टच और बैड टच को सिखाने के लिए, जैसे 3 या 4 साल के 3 साल का बच्चा बहुत छोटा होता है, 4 या 5 साल का बच्चे जब थोड़ा सा समझने लगता है तो डिफरेंट वोकैबुलरी यूज करके उनको ये सारी बातें समझाना चाहिए हमको, भले ही पूरा डिटेल में ना समझाएं. तो जैसे कि हम पहले बोल रहे थे कि हमें कम्युनिटी लेवल पे भी काम करना पड़ेगा, इंडिविजुअल लेवल पे भी काम करना पड़ेगा, और बच्चों के साथ भी काम करना पड़ेगा. भी मिल बांट कर पूरा जो सिस्टम है वो थोड़ा सा ठीक होना शुरू होगा.
थैंक यू मैम.
1 मिनट में थोड़ा कंप्लीट करना चाहूंगी. और नैना, ऐसे केस में जब आप अपने आप को बिल्कुल हेल्पलेस पाएं तो बहुत बेहतर होगा कि आप किसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को रीच करें कि वो कैसे मदद कर सकते हैं, जो कि इस चीज में एक्सपर्ट्स की तरह काम कर रहे हैं. क्योंकि हो सकता है उस दौरान उनका फिर काउंसलिंग का तरीका जो पेरेंट्स की तरफ होगा वो अलग हो, और वो आपको हेल्प भी कर सकेंगे आगे जाकर आप उनसे कैसे बात करें. थैंक यू.
थैंक यू.
Excuse me.
जी.
Yes.
Yeah, please explain about the safe touch, unsafe touch, the good touch or bad touch.
ओके. आप चाहते हैं कि मैं सेफ टच और अनसेफ टच के बारे में आपको बताऊं?
Yes.
ठीक है. तो सेफ टच और अनसेफ टच के बारे में सभी बच्चों को जानकारी मिलनी चाहिए और पेरेंट्स को भी मिलनी चाहिए, जिसमें हम ये बताते हैं.
Speak in English for this question.
For this
Like
question.
answer in English, yeah, because yeah.
Okay, thank you. So safe touch and unsafe touch, it is very, very important that we talk about this. It was earlier commonly known as good touch and bad touch, in which we try and tell the parents as well as the children that there are certain parts of our body that cannot be seen or touched by anybody else. At the same time, we tell them that our body belongs to us, and any action, any behavior, not only touch, but any action or any behavior by anybody else, if that is making you uncomfortable, you should say no to it. At the same time, as you explain about safe touch and unsafe touch to them, you must name the body parts that are private body parts. And sometimes behaviors like pulling the cheeks too much, tickling too much, actions like these, if they are not comforting the child, then the child should be told that this can be unsafe for you and you can say no to it. So as you talk to children, you should tell them that there are some behaviors which are safe for us and which are unsafe for us, and eventually we have to build that knowledge to understand that this is not good for me. Also tell the children that whenever they feel that something unsafe is happening with them, be it a behavior, be it touch, or any action. When I say action, it can also be that some other person is showing his or her private parts to the child, or showing pictures which are not appropriate for a child. So those things also the child should be able to identify. And when they identify these things, they must go and tell it to somebody they trust, so that that adult can help them. So there is actually a lot that can be talked about when we say safe touch
Thank
and
you very
unsafe.
much. Thank you
If
very
you
much.
want to know, you can let us know and we'll send you some resources, or we'll invite you for one of our sessions also. Thank you.
Thank you.
If are there any other comments or questions? Or it's already 5:11. Oh, I can see another question.
Yeah.
There's somebody asking a question saying, in case of child marriage, I have experienced cops saying that, Madam, do you want to ruin her life? Why complain now? Her reputation will go in the village. Yeah. Thank you, Paruma, for raising this. As we have said, that there are certain cultural and social factors that also make it normal, or people rationalize abuse in various forms. And as you and I are a part of the same society, the law enforcement is also a part of the same society that we belong to. And so it's, even if there are laws, we understand that not everybody may be on the same page. Even those who are duty bearers may also need several rounds of training and sensitization to understand that this is a serious violation of a child's rights, and that we need to not normalize this kind of abuse and take strict action. Yeah, but there are civil society organizations working with the police and law enforcement as well. But you're right that we still have some distance to go. Okay, if there are no other questions and comments, should we hand it over to you, Sanjana or Lennon from the Quest Alliance team?
Yes, thank you so much, Abha. So, thank you so much. It was like one of the most interactive sessions in a while, like in few of the, like from the last few master classes. And chat box was also buzzing like anything. So many views, so many like so many comments by everyone. So just to tell everyone, it's like it may be first session about child protection for some of the people who have joined today, and it's in continuous process, yes, and we need to learn a lot because it's every day some of the other kind of abuse we are seeing. Today there are 3, tomorrow there will be another 3, so it will be great to have you all on Trainer Tribe. So I would request my team, if you're there, can you please post the link of the Trainer Tribe handle over here, so that if you have any questions, we have facilitators and experts who are on Trainer Tribe page and will be very happy to answer your queries. Or if you see any, if you want to have a discussion around anything or want to reach out, like get any modules related to child abuse or child protection, safety, anything, that is a right platform or a place where you can find everyone. So please join this Trainer Tribe page, and we will be back to you again on the same page with new masterclass topic. And thank you so much for joining today. We will be
Thank you
ending
so
this
much,
call.
Sanjana. It was our pleasure.
Thank you so much, Ava.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Jasmine.
ma'am.
Thank you
Thank
so
Thank you, ma'am.
much.
Thank you all.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye-bye.
Find your
Thank you, ma'am.
experts on Trainer Tribe page. Don't forget to
Thank
like
you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone.
and join the page. All. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And do reach out to us anytime you need any kind of support. We would be happy to help. Take care. Stay safe, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye-bye.
Simon, would you be like ending this call?
I think Lenin can end it.
Sure.